Welcome to a new Daily Top AskReddit video. Today's topic.
If Kamala Harris won instead of Donald Trump, how do you think the last 9 months would have unfolded differently for the United States? I'd guess it would be more or less a continuation of the Biden presidency. The economy would be much better than it is now. The right would be saying there is an invasion at the border, instead of in our cities. The right would be complaining about the price of X, Y, Z. And the almost non-existent problem of transgender people in sports. Edit, for those saying the economy is at an all-time high. It isn't. The economy isn't the stock market, and if that were the case, the economy was at an all-time high under Biden. Double edit, a lot of people on the right don't realize, 1. The economy has historically done better under Dem presidents. 2. The economy under Trump's first term, the last 2 years, was horrible due to Trump's tax plan that was never going to pay for itself and COVID, which combined set us up with a horrible foundation. POTUS would be opining that the president can't do things. Republicans would be very concerned about government spending. Argentina would be falling apart. I'd also never have to hear the word tariff ever again. Edit, grammar is hard. I wouldn't have my country threatened for annexation every couple weeks and we'd still have a friend to the south of us. I probably still wouldn't know who Pete Hegseth is. That would be nice, I miss it. I maintain that it is a national tragedy and failing that any of us have to know who Stephen Miller is. Pee Wee German. Fuck, it's only been 9 months. Question mark. Only 3 years and 3 months left to go. God, this country is so fucked up. Check out the optimist over here, thinking that we're gonna get to vote this problem away. US farmers would be selling soybeans instead of their crop rotting unsold. And they would be complaining. The farmers would literally be saying they would have been better off under Trump. It feels like so much has happened in 9 months I can barely keep track anymore. Seems like that's their plan. Absolutely. Bannon spelled it out. How to handle the media is to flood them with new info constantly. Good, bad, horrible, it doesn't matter, just flood with something new 2, 3, 4 times a week and no one can keep up. Remember that terrible scandals 3 weeks ago? Of course not. Epstein girls took a while, but no is talking about it now. Remember when Elon Musk said if Kamala gets elected that he'd probably end up in jail? If nothing else, all the inspector generals investigating Elon and his companies would have finished their investigations. You know, the IG's fired right away by Doge, with the biggest case being run out of USAID. One of the first agencies the Trump administration attempted to dismantle is the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID. While at first it was unclear why Musk and Doge had their sights set on eliminating an agency focused on foreign aid, recent reports have shed light on Musk's connection with USAID. In May 2024, the USAID Inspector General announced it was investigating USAID's relationship with Starlink, a subsidiary of SpaceX, which it had paid to provide internet services to Ukraine civilians. While the details of the investigation are not public, there is evidence Russia had access to Starlink, which was not supposed to be possible. However, the investigation will likely be dropped as the Trump administration moves forward with shutting down USAID.
https://www.epi.org/blog/corruption-in-plain-sight-how-elon-musk-has-benefited-from-the Trump-administration/. No surprise Elon dipped after those loose ends were fully taken care of. Wow, the rise and fall of Doge feels like 100 years ago. When really it was like 3 months ago. I don't know if I'm going to make it through this. Politics would be boring, and that'd be just fine. Boring is functional, functional is good. We'd probably be hearing arguments in the US v Donald Trump right now. He was already convicted, and would have been sentenced by now in NY. The NY case was never going to be much of a serious sentence. But Georgia and the documents case had potential. Calm and boring, just the way it should be. Full disclosure, I'm a registered Democrat and a pretty lefty liberal type, queer millennial atheist in a blue state. One of the things that gave me great relief about the election of Joe Biden was a sense that quiet competency would be in charge again. I can't name a majority of Biden's cabinet. Why? Because they were capable people that showed up, did the job, and didn't cause any national or international incidents. Quiet competency. Contrast that with being able to name nearly every member of Trump's first administration because it felt like every day there was a new scandal, a new incompetency on display, a new firing, quitting to be replaced by someone even worse, just constant noise from people who weren't prepared to do the job and didn't do it well regardless. That's not to say everyone Trump picked was wholly incompetent. Despite their flaws, people like Rex Tillerson and Jim Mattis were at least relatively capable of handling the jobs. I wouldn't have personally picked an oil CEO as Secretary of State, but you can't argue that he had international relations experience and management of extraordinarily complex systems. But then you ended up with people like Ben Carson, Mike Pompeo, Betsy DeVos, Scott Pruitt, Jeff Sessions, Bill Barr, Stephen Miller, the quartet of idiocy that was his press secretaries, just some of the absolute worst people to hold these offices. And I wish that was partisanship talking, but these are genuinely people who shouldn't have been given the nameplate on the desks, either due to sheer incompetency, open hatred for the department they were running, or complete and total lack of readiness to serve the nation that never improved over time. So 2021 comes and we get back to competent people largely qualified for the job, or well capable of rising to the task. Looking at you, Secretary Pete, just showing up and doing the job, and the government just functions. Nobody got fired. Nobody brought shame upon the department. Nobody was a laughing stock. Some of them were just milquetoast functionaries who are all but nameless, and I'm like, great, I don't need administration officials to be notorious. But here we are again. The circus rolled out of town, the circus rolls back in. And this time the clowns include an alcoholic wife-beater, a lobbying Scientologist, replacing a statutory sex trafficker, a science-denying anti-vaxxer, a WWE cast member, a puppy killer, a Russian asset, and I don't think a single one of them has a net worth under 9 figures. And however many of those last, I guarantee you it'll be circus act after circus act until the eventual firings and replacings and actings, and it's just 4 more years of noise, noise, noise. That's the thing. Other than the continuous erosion of our democracy and the total abandonment of justice and values, I'm looking forward to the least about the next 40 months. The drone of anxiety that comes from knowing these people are the ones in charge, made louder still by the fact that tens of millions of people around me knew this was going to happen and bought tickets for this circus again because the alternative was black and a woman, and neither of those are acceptable in their hearts. I can't name a majority of Biden's cabinet. Why? Because they were capable people that showed up, did the job, and didn't cause any national or international incidents. I never thought in the fact that not knowing who's who in the government is a good sign that things are working. That comment put a new perspective. Harris would almost certainly not have decimated the EPA, decimated the National Park Service, decimated the CDC, decimated USAID. Created irrational tariffs that have wrecked international shipping and sales, picked a fight with Canada, picked a fight with Denmark over Greenland, sent militarized thugs with no accountability to terrorize people in major U.S. cities, caused almost every journalist who reports on the Pentagon to quit over loyalty oaths, given permission to Qatar to build an Air Force base in Montana because they gave her a fancy plane, appointed a secretary of HHS who thinks Tylenol causes autism. I am far, far from a Kamala Harris fangirl, but her administration would not have been nearly as reckless, vicious, hateful, and frankly, batshit insane. You forgot one more thing: incompetent. In addition to being evil and self-serving, this administration is full of unqualified, incompetent idiots, even more so than in Trump's first term. It makes me worry that if something like COVID happened again, the response would be even more of a shit show. When something like COVID happens again, they just decimated the CDC, there's no one to track that stuff before it gets out of hand. It's bad enough that they have been suppressing the measles outbreak in Texas. Oh, I forgot one of the worst ones, dropping bombs on random fishing boats and claiming they were smuggling drugs with no evidence whatsoever. Just straight up murdering other countries' citizens out of the sky for no reason, but they get off on it, and want to start a war. You'd have farmers making excellent profits and complaining how much better things would be under Trump. And thousands of people would still have their jobs, and thousands would still have their homes. Don't think ICE or the National Guard would be raiding cities. I also don't think we'd be bombing Venezuelan boats either. You wouldn't be threatening to annex Canada and Greenland either. Kamala wouldn't rename the Gulf of Mexico, but she isn't a mentally insane person. The problem wouldn't be the last 9 months, it would be 2026 and 2028. Trump is a symptom of something that's very wrong in America. Harris would have been like Biden, just delaying what's happening now. I thought it might have just been better if Trump had won in 2020. Maybe that's cruel considering what his ineptitude would have done to more people during the ongoing COVID pandemic, but if his ass had been in office for that, and the inflation, and the cost of living explosion, maybe we could have expelled Trump and MAGA BS from our lives in 2024, hell, maybe even by the 2022 midterms. I can't help but feel that Biden winning was a band-aid that staved off the worst for 4 years, and gave short-minded Americans time to tie Trump to the good times of 2019. If we'd have taken those 4 years to properly prosecute the traitors and put some fear of God into them that you will be fucked if you would fuck with democracy, maybe it could have helped prevent this. I agree completely. Actually remember having a conversation with my mom when Biden won, and we both agreed that it felt like we were in the eye of the storm. Neither of us thought that Trump would become president again, but we both felt like MAGA was going to come back with a vengeance. I felt this way as well. Say he won 2020, there's no rigged election talk, no stop the steal, no J6, he wouldn't have had 4 years of plotting his revenge tour. GOP talking heads couldn't blame Biden for everything. It certainly would have sucked, but maybe not on the scale it is now. And like you said, maybe we get some guardrails in 2022 to limit the damage and we'd be past him, and hopefully MAGA would have died out a bit. And the Dems aren't willing to do what needs to be done to fix these problems because they are too beholden to the donor class. Well, that may be, but the people didn't vote for the Dems, so it really doesn't matter what class they're beholden to, they don't got no power anyway. I bet I'd still be getting paid right now, and I would still have a job. I'd still have my twice-a-year graphic design contract with the local power company. Because of budget cuts, they decided to do it in-house by shoving the work on someone who barely knows how to work Photoshop and InDesign. We've been doing their reports for almost a decade now,